Elsewhere in the wood, Doug and Duke sit out and have a sing-song, which leads to another musical number. You know what, I'm actually going to start a musical montage counter, as we see the Hodag casually murdering even more people we'd never seen before. Okay, it appears these woods are just full of people and they're all getting killed by this thing, and no one has ever called in the army to sweep the location to take this thing down. I mean, people know of it, so there must have been survivors, so why have they not alerted a higher authority? We've already had 5 deaths on screen, and a few of those characters are local to the area. Do they not have families, or they're just like the Misfits review coming soon, and never seem to have any interaction with their parents or loved ones? Brent and Paul find a ladder, which I guess is some kind of self-made watchtower, which Brent climbs, and why does everyone in this movie climb a ladder like they work in a Thigh Master? Back on the ground, Paul falls over the body of a dead deer, screams loudly, which for some reason Brent doesn't seem to hear, and then rolls around in it a few times, and I don't know, here's an idea. Get up! Back to Scott and Doug, local boys remember, who don't believe in the Hodag despite the overwhelming evidence of him not being all that stealthy, talk and then die, which we see in gloriously gory detail. You know, because it's a comedy. Back at the cabin, the group engage in a game of I Never, while Paul gets a music montage as he masturbates to a photo of his boyfriend. I wish I was making that up, but I'm not. And okay, granted, it only lasts a second, but really, what did this sequence add to the movie? Why was it in there? It wasn't funny. We've already established that Paul is bi. We've already established the picture of this man dressed up as a woman. So, it's not funny. So why is it in there? Later, while Mark is in the darkroom developing his photos, Becky enters and makes a move on him, but Mark turns her down, noting that she, along with Paul and Brent, made his life a living hell in high school. Yes, when a hot naked woman is throwing herself at you and you're alone with her, that is the perfect time to bring up a problem you might have had with her in high school. A little later, while tending to the barbecue, Brent hears a noise in the woods and heads out to investigate, first finding a severed hand before getting stabbed in the front by the Hodag Cease and then dragged off into the woods. His scream alerts his friends, and a shot from Scott forces the Hodag to abandon Brent, but not immediately, as he still finds the time to tie up Brent and hang him from a tree. With what must be a painfully deep wound in his chest, the boys do the smart thing and untie him, carry him back to the cabin, and dress his wound? No, they give him alcohol to drink, and we're treated to some more stunning dialogue and stirring delivery.
I found this shoved through his chest.
You gotta be kidding me.
If you close your eyes and wish real hard, you can imagine they care.
If we move him, he might bleed to death.
Which would be sound advice if you hadn't just moved him. Paul and Becky go looking for help and discover another cabin. Becky is freaked out, so naturally Paul takes this opportunity to make a move.
Don't worry. I won't let anything happen to your beautiful body.
A woman feeling vulnerable and a man making a move on her? Surely not! Sadly, I do know a couple of people like this in real life, and I think they're twats. Back at the cabin, Mark and Jess continue to bond, Cooper watches the game, while Brent proceeds to slowly bleed out with no bandage or anything over his wound. Deciding to take some action, Mark leaves for Brick's cabin, in the hope he can get a ride off him for Brent. Why no one thought of this before escapes me. Back to Paul and Becky, Paul smells something, which is revealed to be the Hodag, and being the hero that he is, he leaves Becky alone, only instead of walking back the way he came, he just wanders around and dies. Becky also runs, before she loses her leg, is stabbed to the back, and then she dies too. Back at the cabin, Cooper is still listening to the game, and I know I'm not American, but if a football game starts at 3 in the afternoon, would it still be playing by the time it's dark? His team loses, and, totally distressed, Cooper leaves the cabin and walks out into the woods, which is basically the script's way of saying, we have nothing more for you to do, and a short time later he dies. At another location, a man who had a tiny scene in the bar arrives in the woods, and dies too. And here lies my problem with the film if it's trying to be a comedy. This scene wasn't funny, and wasn't a commentary on any scenes from the films of the 70s or 80s. It was just a pointless scene to add to the body count. It's another character we know nothing about, and a character that's had nothing to do with our main group. So what was the point of it? It just adds to the runtime, but adds nothing else. Back at the cabin, despite the fear that moving Brent could result in him bleeding to death, Jess and Mark move him anyway, and let him smoke. Well, he's already had a drink, why should a cigarette harm him? And lighting a fire to keep everyone warm, and in front of Brent, who still has a hole in his chest, let me remind you, Mark and Jess kiss, if you can call it that. And then undress and have sex. I hope she's on the pill.
That's cool. Just bang while the Brent's dying.
He has a point. This is also a good lesson in how not to make your character sympathetic and easy to root for. The first thing you don't want them to do is to make out in front of a dying friend and then go off and have sex while that friend is still dying. Call me crazy, but it just takes away any and all ability for me to like them. Also, I know I'm nitpicking, but But could these two be any more awkward together? They really have no chemistry and don't even look like they're kissing, more like gently headbutting each other. It's like the actors didn't get on and didn't want to actually kiss. Is it so hard to kiss someone on camera?
Don't deep crash mines me.
Of course not! Hell, Mark kissed Becky earlier in the film, and that was an actual kiss. I guess you could use the argument that maybe they're playing it as nervous because they're childhood friends, but come on, do you seriously expect me to believe that the movie went for that degree of character development when they spent the majority of this film killing off people we've never seen before? After their very short tryst, Scott arrives and informs them that he can drive them out of the woods, but his truck can only seat 2. So why don't they just have one person ride shotgun and 2 people lie in the back? Because that would make sense? Or maybe it's because they can't move Brent. Well, no, seeing as he's now on his feet in this very scene. You know, he's really not doing too bad for someone who's got a hole in his chest. While in the truck, Jess and Scott talk about the Hodag, which is the film's attempt to give it a backstory. But as it hints that the Hodag has been around since the 1800s, it just further mystifies me why no one would ever have investigated these disappearances. Considering Scott seems to have hunted it for years, as his father did before him, and this thing seems to have a bigger body count than Jason and Michael Myers combined, you'd think he might have actually informed a few people, like, I don't know, the police? Back at the cabin, Brent, on the verge of death, has a moment of self-reflection, apologises to Mark for being an arsehole, and gives his relationship with Jess his blessing. So Mark kills him. Yes, you heard me right. In an attempt to throw in a twist, Mark is also a killer, although he's a killer with no connection to the Hodag storyline. While in a better written film, with fully developed, fleshed out characters, this could have been seen as quite the shock. Here it just comes across as unnecessary and just complicates the film. It'd be like me introducing a side character or a nemesis just for the sake of it.
Do you need me yet?
No, not yet.
Unlimited
Get out.
power.
Back with Jess and Scott, they come face to face with the Hodag. Scott has obviously spent his life building up to this moment, and so plays this ultra smart, and gets out of his vehicle, you know, the vehicle he could have used to run the thing over with, and slowly walks toward the Hodag, firing off his shotgun round after round. Yeah, the first one didn't phase it, so why would the second? Also, why are you walking towards it? This can't end well. And it doesn't, as the Hodag turns the gun on Scott and he shoots himself through the chest at point-blank range with a shotgun. You'll be fine. I've seen Killjoy too, and I know shotgun blasts to the chest are not immediately fatal. Also, if he's been hunting this thing his whole life, didn't he have a better plan than to walk towards it and shoot it? Wouldn't a safer, less stupid plan have been to just, hit the accelerator, run the thing over, and then, reverse back and forth a couple of times, and then just give it one final reverse to finish the job? Well, that's what I'd do anyway. Back at the cabin, using that subtle form of acting that has become this movie's birthright, Mark goes mad, or has a rave, I'm not sure, and through the power of flashback, we discover he was the one who cut the phone lines, slashed the tyres, killed Eric, and also killed Paul. Now, as pointless as this turn is as far as the story goes, and for all the knocking I've given the film and the character of Mark, I like how they plant the seeds of his problems with Becky, Brent, and Paul very early in the film.
You messed up my childhood enough. I don't have to take your shit for the rest of my life.
The problem is the script is so badly put together and there is just no form of subtlety about the way it's written or how it's delivered. So the revelation really isn't that much of a shock. Jess returns and, discovering Mark's true nature, now is the time for her to finally emote.
I don't even know you.
Just kidding. Mark shoots out the truck tyres, I assume, well, that's what he says anyway, and hands the gun to Jessica. Wow, she looks something, doesn't she? Instead, she hits him with the gun butt and runs off, but not before being kind enough to taunt him and let him know exactly where she is. Now, I know you're probably thinking she's trying to be smart and lead him into a trap. You would be wrong. She finds a barn, or maybe it's the mill from the beginning of the film, I'm not sure, which begs the question, how long has she been running, seeing as no one has been able to stumble across this place through the whole movie? Is it that the barn doesn't appear on their maps, or that, I don't know, maybe the filmmakers just pulled this out of their ass? I'd go with option 2. Inside the barn, she finds a Hodag egg and the bodies of Cooper and Becky.
Kill me!
Oh, come on. How is she still alive? She lost her leg and was stabbed through the back, and God knows what he did to cause that chest wound. If the stab wound alone didn't kill her, she should have lost all the blood in her body by now. But it doesn't matter because Mark shows up and kills her anyway. See, Mark had nothing against Jess and Cooper, and that's why he spared them. Which leads to another Oscar moment when Mark realises what's happened to Cooper.
No!
Gripping. And then the Hodag arrives and kills Mark. Carry on. Jess steals the egg and stumbles across even more bodies, which now ups the body count to at least 10 in this film, and I'm supposed to believe that this thing does this every year and no one investigates it? If this were Raccoon City, they'd have nuked the damn forest by now. Arriving back at the cabin, Jess uses the, for the moment, still alive form of Brent as a human shield, so the Hodag kills him. For real this time, and then puts the egg in the oven. As the Hodag squeezes the life out of her, Scott reappears and shoots it, which knocks it from the cabin onto the floor. See, I told you! Getting shot with a shotgun at point-blank range does not mean instant death. Also, I find it confusing that a shotgun blast at point-blank range didn't phase it, but a blast from the same gun just further away sends it flying through the wall. As Scott breathes his last breath, I guess shotgun blasts do kill, they just kill very slowly, Jess discovers the Hodag has escaped and Scott reveals it never actually dies. Which begs the question, what is the point of hunting it? Scott dies and Jess has a dream, which means nothing, and awakens in a van with two guys whom we've never seen before, and she should just thank her lucky stars she's not in a Rob Zombie film, because if she was, these two would probably have done unspeakable things to her while she was unconscious. And if these two characters didn't at least look down her shirt while she was asleep, then I commend this movie for treating two of its characters like real decent people. Sadly, it's two characters introduced right at the film's conclusion, and the film ends with the obligatory "he's still out there" moment, with a maple syrup dripping crime scene investigator. Because you know, it's not like he has to worry about laying low or anything, and that's Backwoods Bloodbath. It's a film I think was trying to be a low-budget Jeepers Creepers, but suffers from bad performances, awful voice dubbing. Seriously, it's like 90% of this film was dubbed and dubbed terribly, and some really bad editing. There's a sequence early that shows the Hodag lurking, and the editing and cuts during this scene are so bad, I can't believe they were intentional. Watching it again, it's more than obvious that the film was trying to pass itself off as a comedy. There's even a bonus scene right at the end of the credits, which I won't spoil, that confirms it, and maybe I'm just not getting its angle. Maybe I'm completely missing the mark. But for me, the cast just don't have the ability or the subtlety to work the movie and the dialogue that way. And it seems they have no idea how to play it, going for a mix of either hammy over the top or deadpan straight delivery, and it just doesn't mesh. A good example of a film that manages what this film was trying to do would be Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, review coming soon, where the horror setting and the stereotypes are used to the film's advantage, and it's bloody hilarious because of it. I'm not one to encourage unsocial activities or drinking, but maybe if you were drunk as a skunk or high as a kite, this film would be the funniest film we've ever seen. As it stands, I can't advise that type of behaviour because my probation officer will have me thrown back in rehab. So I advise against drinking. Drinking is very, very bad. You must never ever drink. However, if NerdQuest is as bad or worse than this film, I'm making a personal promise now that I will review every single one of the Twilight films without the aid of alcohol. And this is so going to come back and bite me in the arse at a later date.